Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome council, staff, and members of the public to our February 14th council meeting and Valentine's Day and call this meeting to order. I'd like to ask Mrs. Pearson, Clerk Operations Clerk, for the disclaimer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And that is that council members, staff, guests, and members of the public are advised that the Council of the Town of Petroleum meetings are being video and audio recorded and will be live streamed and posted to the Town of Petroleum's YouTube, along with the official written minutes on our website. As such, comments and opinions expressed may be published, and any comments expressed by individual council members, guests, and the public are their own and do not represent the opinions or comments of the Town of Petroleum as a whole and or the Council of the Town of Petroleum. The recorded video of the full council meeting is not considered the official record of that meeting. The official record of the council meeting shall consist solely of the minutes approved by council of the Town of Petrolia.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. At this time, I'd also like to ask Mrs. Pearson, Clerk Operations Clerk, for the roll call, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I'd like to note that Councillor Dighton is not included in roll call. He is on an approved leave of absence from his council duties. Councillor Field?
Present.
Councillor O'Hara?
Present.
Councillor Purdy?
Present.
Councillor Such?
Present.
Councillor Welton?
Present.
Mayor Loosely?
Present.
We do have a quorum, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. At this time, I'd like to request that council declare a conflict of interest now or at the appropriate time and complete the necessary paperwork for the clerk. Seeing none, I'll move on to the adoption of the agenda, and I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor, please.
And Your Worship, we actually do have an amendment to this evening's agenda, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So for item number 16A and bylaw 11 of 2022, these will be deferred to a future meeting and will not be heard this evening.
Thank you. Okay, again, I'll ask for a motion to put the adoption of the agenda on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Purdy, seconded by Councillor Welton, and I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to adopt the agenda as amended for the February 14th, 2022 regular meeting of council.
Any discussion regarding the agenda as amended? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to our minutes from previous meetings. We have the minutes of a regular council meeting held on January the 10th, 2022. And I'd like to ask for a motion to put that motion on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor O'Hara, seconded by Councillor Such. And I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to adopt as circulated minutes of the regular meeting of council held on January the 10th, 2022.
Any discussion, errors or omissions? If not, all those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. And we also have the minutes of a council education session also held on January the 10th, 2022. And I'll ask for a move and a seconder to put that motion on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Field, seconded by Councillor Such. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you. And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to adopt as circulated minutes of an education session of council held on January the 10th, 2022.
Thank you. I just have one comment before I open it up. I wanted to thank Inspector Chris Avery and Staff Sergeant Ross Stewart for that written report that was enclosed with the minutes. So maybe if I could have the clerk just pass that on with thanks.
Certainly, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any discussion regarding those minutes? If not, all those in favor of approving those minutes? Opposed? That motion carries. Okay, this moves us on to the inspirational message tonight. And I'd like to ask Councillor Field for that, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. In looking at Valentine's Day today, it's sort of a Valentine's one. Today is a reminder to celebrate love of all kinds. It's never about what others define for you, but what you feel inside. While romantic love is ideal for some, for others, the love of family, friends, and pets are what is ideal for them. Love is love, and it should always be celebrated regardless of the day or the relationship status. Celebrate love in your life every day.
Thank you, Councillor Field, and that certainly is so appropriate on Valentine's Day. All right, we'll move on to the council roundtable. And tonight, we start with Councillor Welton, please. I think you're on mute, Councillor Welton.
Now I'm okay now.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so the committee continues to review the master plan, currently just reviewing the idea of wheeled sports park. Continuing with updates on soccer pitch development for 2023. Event planning, Family Day, Pizza Fest, and Canada Day. The trail work planned previously for 2022 is starting to get finalized and scheduled. And that's it, Your Worship.
Okay, I think we even went a little further, but that's good. Thank you, Councillor Welton. We'll move on to Councillor O'Hara, please.
Any of my comments will bring up under minutes of 150.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Such.
Nothing at this time, Your Worship.
Councillor Purdy.
Nothing at this time, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Field.
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. All right, that'll move us on to the appointed councillor representatives on the different committees. And the first one we have, oh, sorry, I have to give you my roundtable report. I almost forgot. I want to congratulate Johnny G's Premium Pizza in obtaining the Cool Place to Work category for the 2021 Outstanding Business Achievement Awards to the Sarnia-Lambton Chamber of Commerce. I know that's kind of old business, but I did want to recognize them for that. Special thanks to Mr. Ellen Culvert, Chief Executive Officer for the Sarnia-Lambton Chamber of Commerce, and his staff for having a Petrolia business video involving some selected businesses produced by Matt and LaSalle Dotstetter, producer and co-owner of Paradox Images, at no cost to the town. Also, special thanks to the businesses and Donna McCausland that took part. Donna McCausland also received an award through the Chamber on her letter stating the service from Petroleum businesses is outstanding. And I also just want to remind council, I'm sure everyone is aware, Mr. Culvert is retiring at the end of February. We certainly wish him the very best, and he has served Petrolia very well. I attended a Lambton County Committee meeting held on Wednesday, January the 19th, and will continue to keep council informed. I took part in the municipal engagement on Ontario's reopening plan with the heads of council on a conference call on Thursday, January 20th, and that was very beneficial. Congratulations to SORT for receiving the June Colward Achievement Award for volunteerism from the Ministry of Culture and Multiculturalism on February the 3rd, 2022. Special thanks to those involved on recommending SORT for the award, and they are certainly a great benefit to the town and surrounding area. And we'll have Chief Arden speak to that later on in the agenda. I attended a meeting of County Council held on Wednesday, February the 3rd, and again, we'll keep council informed. I also attended an executive meeting of the Sinclair Region Conservation Authority held on Thursday, February the 10th, 2022, with many changes taking place. I was invited to the Blue Water Health press release on Tuesday, February the 1st, where our MPP Bob Bailey announced a $12.2 million from the province to go towards a 24-bed addiction center. Premier Ford, Minister Christine Elliott congratulated administration, staff, and MPP Bob Bailey on this important project. And this is certainly great news for Sarnia-Lambton. Special thanks to Mr. Mike Thompson, Director of Operations, Mr. Paul Martin, Lead Works Foreman, and members of the Works Department in the great job on clearing the snow so quickly over the last few weeks. Well done. And again, a special thanks to Councillor Ross O'Hara for attending that media conference on my behalf. I know there may be some issues, but I certainly appreciate you stepping forward, Councillor O'Hara, so thank you for that. I took part in a webinar for regulatory and policy proposals under the Conservation Authorities Act, Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks on Tuesday, February the 8th, 2022. And as council is aware, many changes are taking place in the conservation area over the next few years, and I will continue to keep council informed. The last thing I want to mention that I'm really very pleased to announce to council and the members of the public is to inform everyone that the population in Petrolia has grown by 4.7% to 6,013 from 2016 to 2021. This is great news for Petrolia, growing at a good controlled growth. And that's all I have. Thank you. Moving on in the agenda now for the councillors to speak on the different committees they're on. We'll go first to planning and development. And the liaison members is Councillor Joel Field and Councillor Ross O'Hara. If you'd like, one of you gentlemen would like to speak to that, please.
I can start off and then maybe Ross can, if I miss any. Still a very busy committee. We have grown to about 9 subdivisions in different stages of approvals. Gold Leaf is coming along very well. We have 2 other projects, one that's received site plan approval for smaller joined homes. That went off of Eureka Street. And we have a lot of exciting things that are still coming up. The committee is still busy and a lot of interest in Petrolia and developing here. So it's very good news for growth opportunities, and we just keep moving them along, and hopefully we get one concreted down. So yeah, everything's going well.
Thank you, Councillor Field. Councillor O'Hara, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, it is exciting news because every time I open my emails, I hear good news about something else that somebody's interested in Petrolia. So we have to be doing something right here. And I would just like to add to that Gold Leaf, that Van Breeze, because we're going to move to one of their units on Valentina Street. And she said that Petrolia was the easiest place to develop they'd ever been. So isn't that good news for Petrolia?
That is. Thank you, Councillor O'Hara. That's great news. And I also want to just pass on, as you're aware, we did get a very nice letter from Gold Leaf stating how the staff have done such a great job on working with them and getting things done. So I want to congratulate committee members and the staff for working together and keeping that reputation that Petrolia has as promoting new businesses within our town. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. We'll move on to municipal services and traffic. Our liaison member is Mr. Councillor Don Welton. And I see just before I turned it over to you, Councillor Welton, he has on there the first quarter comparison, the Petrolia building per report, the Petroleum monthly report that we all have. And I certainly want to thank Councillor Don Welton for the work and county staff. So go ahead, Councillor Welton.
Well, first of all, I apologize for getting ahead of myself on the last report.
That's
anyway,
okay.
Valentina Street is now out for tender, and there has been numerous contractors logging on to the bids and tenders to look at the tender. Third Mutual and Kintail tender will be going out to tender mid-March, and a recommendation will be coming to council in April. Works Department has been very busy in January, clearing roads and sidewalks, and have been doing a great job. For the March meeting of council, the 2022 transfer station dates will be coming to council along with the chipping dates for the year. And that's all, your worship.
Well, that's a lot. Thank you, Councillor Welton. That again is great news for the town. I just wanted to mention for everyone too, if you probably saw it in that report, but for those listening, the building permit value last year was $18,673,205, or it was for 67 permits. So even though it's been a difficult year, I thought the town of Petrolia has done very well. So that's great news. We'll move on then.
Your worship, if I could just get a motion to receive and file the building permit stacks in fourth quarter, please.
Sure can. I'll get a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Welton, seconded by Councillor Field. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to receive and file the 2021 building permit statistics and the fourth quarter update.
Any questions regarding that motion? If not, all those in favor of approving that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. That'll move us on to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. Our members are Councillor Joel Field, who is acting on behalf or for Councillor Dighton, and Councillor Don Welton. And I would also like him to finish with presenting a motion to approve those minutes as well. So, gentlemen, which one would like to start first?
I think Councillor Welton has given that report, but I can do the quick highlight. We're very busy. The committee is still reviewing the master plan, looking at soccer field options for the 2023 season, and planning a lot of our community events, which hopefully are going to be a go for us this year. I think that's pretty much it. Did I miss anything, Councillor Welton?
Thank you, Councillor Field. And yes, thank you too, Councillor Welton. I know you did give us some of that information ahead of time. We do have the minutes for the February the 2nd, 2022. I'd like to approve it this time. So I'll need a motion to put that, to put it on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor Field, seconded by Councillor Welton. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the February 2022 Community Services Advisory Committee minutes be endorsed as presented.
Any questions regarding those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving those minutes? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. That'll move us on now to the Petrolia Heritage Advisory Committee. We have two members that sit on that. That's Councillor Field and Councillor Such. Which one of you gentlemen would like to start that, please?
I can take this.
Okay, go ahead.
The Heritage Committee, we had discussions about the facade program, and we do have some interest. There's been a few different outreaches for that. The Heritage rebate was discussed at our last meeting, walking tour, and discussing some fundraising ideas from the committee. Still a very active committee, and lots of excitement about the past. So,
Thank you, Councillor Field. Yes, it certainly is. Councillor Such, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Councillor Fields had her bang on. Good job.
Okay, thank you. So we also have the minutes of the Heritage Committee meeting held on February the 2nd. I'd like to ask for a motion to put this on the floor for discussion.
I'll move.
Moved by Councillor Field. I'll need a seconder by Councillor Welton. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the February 2022 Petrolia Heritage Advisory Committee minutes to be endorsed as presented.
Any questions, errors, or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving those minutes? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on now to the Petrolia 150th Anniversary Advisory Committee. Our committee members are Councillor Ross O'Hara and Councillor Marty Such. Which one of you gentlemen would like to start that off? Hey, Councillor O'Hara, go ahead.
Okay, well, our committee is starting to really get in gear here. It's been a little bit difficult over Zoom, but we're really getting going. We've got some subcommittee volunteers taking on subcommittees. We discussed the parade, and we're going to look at having a commemorative newspaper for the bicentennial, and we still have coin sets on sale. They're going well, but we still have coins there. And we had a motion to look out to the Community Service Committee to see if they would lend lead the 150th anniversary parade, and Tara's going to be looking after that. So staff and the volunteers have been doing a lot of work there.
Thank you, Councilor O'Hara, and you're right, the time is just approaching more and more, but that's good news. Councilor Such, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
You know what, just to echo what Councilor O'Hara said, you know what, that we've got some committees that are going, and you know what, each time we meet gets a little more excitement in, and once it comes around, it's going to be very exciting.
That's good. Thank you, Councilor Such. Now, we have too, the 150th Anniversary Committee held a meeting on February the 2nd, and I'd like to ask for a motion to put that on the floor for discussion to approve those minutes. Councilor O'Hara and Councilor Such, I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you. And that is for the February 2022 Petroleum 150 Anniversary Advisory Committee minutes to be endorsed as presented.
Any questions regarding those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving those minutes? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. That moves us on to the Petrolia and North Enniskillen Fire Committee. We have Councillor Joel Field and Councillor Grant Purdy that sit on that committee. There is no minutes there, but I'd like to see which one of you gentlemen would like to take the lead on this one. Councillor Purdy, go ahead.
I was just going to say if Joel would like to.
Sure.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're correct. We haven't had a meeting, but we do have one scheduled for the first week of March. I just like to mention the SORT team. You had mentioned that, and I had that written down. I apologize. I should have mentioned that as well. You know, it's pretty exciting that they were acknowledged. The SORT team has really come a long ways from when it initially started as SERV, and you know, I think we've had a good crew of volunteers that have been helping our volunteers, and it was nice to see a couple that had just recently retired come back out and be acknowledged for all their hard work during the COVID period and all the extra hours that they put in helping our fire department. So I'm just excited about that, and I just wanted to mention that as well. So.
Thank you, Councillor
you.
Field. I am too, and I'm going to have the chief speak to that later on in the agenda. Okay, we'll move on. We have correspondence for information. We've got A to E, and I'd like to get a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Purdy, seconded by Councillor Field. And I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, or sorry, to read that motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive and file correspondence items number 9A through E.
And just for council's information, you're probably aware of it. Correspondence A, that's regarding the Leaper development. That's for the hearing at that time. Any questions regarding the correspondence? If not, all those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. That brings us to the correspondence from the City of Aurora regarding dissolving the OLT, which is the Ontario Land Tribunal, which was formerly the OMB. And I'd like to ask for a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor, and I would like to discuss that as well. Moved by Councillor Purdy, seconded by Councillor Welton. And I'll ask the clerk, it's quite lengthy, but I'll ask her to read that motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just putting in our mover and a seconder. Okay, and so that motion is, whereas municipalities across this province collectively spend millions of dollars of taxpayer money and municipal resources developing official plans that meet current provincial planning policy. And whereas an official plan is developed through months of public consultations to ensure that future planning and development will meet the specific needs of our community. And whereas our official plan includes zoning provisions that encourage development of the missing middle or the gentle density to meet the need for the attainable housing in our community. And whereas our official plan is ultimately approved by the province, and where it is in the legislative purview of the municipal council to approve official plan amendments or zoning bylaws changes to better the community or fit with the vision of the town of Petrolia official plan. And whereas it is also within the legislative purview of the municipal council to deny official plan amendments or zoning bylaw changes that do not better the community or do not fit within the vision of the town of Petrolia official plan. And whereas municipal planning decisions may be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal, the OLT, formerly known as the Ontario Municipal Board, or OMB, an unelected appointed body that is not accountable to the residents of the town of Petrolia. And whereas the OLT has the authority to make the final decision on planning matters based on a best planning outcome and not whether the proposed development is in compliance with municipal official plans and provincial planning policy. And whereas all decisions, save planning decisions, made by the municipal council are only subject to appeal by judicial review, and such appeals are limited to questions of law and or process. And whereas Ontario is the only province in Canada that empowers a separate adjudicative tribunal to review and overrule local decisions applying provincially approved plans. And whereas towns and cities across this province are repeatedly forced to spend millions of dollars defending official plans that have already been approved by the province in expensive, time-consuming, and ultimately futile OLT hearings. And whereas lengthy, costly OLT hearings act as a barrier to the development of attainable housing. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Corporation of the Town of Petrolia requests the government of Ontario to dissolve the OLT immediately, thereby eliminating one of the most significant sources of red tape delaying the development of more attainable housing in Ontario. And be it further resolved that a copy of this motion be sent to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Leader of the Opposition, the leaders of the Liberal and Green Party, MPP Bob Bailey and MPP Monty McNaughton. And be it further resolved that a copy of this motion be sent to the Association of Municipalities, known as AMO, and all municipalities for their consideration.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. I know that was quite lengthy. And just before I turn it over to council, I just want to mention that I've been involved with the OMB off and on for over 40 years. And I really agree with this motion. I'd like to see council support this. I feel the time it takes and the money and time wasted, I think council should be able to make those decisions and be accountable for it. And they would be each time there's an election. And I'd just like to add too, if I could, to the clerk, if this is approved by council, I'd like to also ask that it also be sent back, or that the city of Aurora be so informed. Okay, I'll
Duly
open it
noted,
up.
Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Purdy, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do understand the theory behind this and how it makes sense. I guess just one question I do have is, assuming that the OLT is dissolved, I guess it's a two-part question. Part one, will the decision making go to the lower tier being us or the upper tier being the county? And the other part is, who would be responsible for, like, if there was any sort of litigation or appeals, is that going to fall back on us as opposed to the Ontario Land Tribunal?
I can start that and maybe staff could help me, but I think first of all, yes, our council would be ultimately responsible, except when there's like the official plan zoning bylaw where the county becomes involved. But basically, we would be accountable. Yes, we would be responsible, and we usually are anyway, but we would be responsible for the outcomes, and we'd be responsible for whether decisions that are made, and we would have to be accountable. So if the public isn't happy with what we've done, they have the option to vote us out. But I just think at a time for years and years, it's taken so long to try and get a hearing that it holds everything up, costs everybody money, staff, developers as well. So I just believe it's time for that change. Thank you. Councillor Field.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I'm sort of torn on this. I have talked to a number of larger municipalities, councillors, and even 2 staff members. And I understand that it's difficult in larger cities. It is a way for people to appeal. It hasn't, well, I guess we have a couple right now that are going through this process. But I almost feel like there is no appeal body without taking it to court and taking it to that next step. I don't believe that, I think when the OMB was dissolved and OLT started, there was great hope that this was going to be a body that was going to be efficient. I don't think it is. I think even just looking at how long delays can happen. But I almost wish that they could just review this and that they could fix some of their problems. I just don't know if that's, if they have the ability to do that now, but larger cities, I guess, are impacted majorly. So I'm sort of tossed. I still think that it's a way for people to appeal things that they don't feel is right and maybe missed it during an official plan. So I guess I'm just kind of torn. I just like to hear from everybody else of what their thoughts are.
Thank you, Councillor Field. Some of those comments I have heard over for years and years about to try and fix it, to improve it, to speed it up. I haven't seen it happen, but let's continue on. Councillor O'Hara.
I agree that it's a red tape body is what it is. But on the other hand, I would want to make sure that a municipality like Petrolia wouldn't be on the hook and be in litigation from a developer or an individual because we made the decision. I'm concerned about that, along with Councillor Purdy's remarks. I still don't know whether it would be the town of Petrolia that would be on the hook, or would it be the county of Lambton?
I guess it's depending on just what it is. I don't know if Mrs. Pearson, you have anything to add to that or not?
Your worship, I actually defer to our manager of planning and building services. I did see Ken bring his screen on, so I think that was his willingness to communicate on behalf of staff.
Mr. Melanson, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, your worship. I would just say that at this point, it would be too preliminary to say what the answer would be, because the first step, of course, is for the province to make a decision on whether or not to abolish the OLT or to make changes to it. And then once they make that decision, how does it flow down through to either Petrolia Council or to County Council or both? So I wouldn't want to speculate at this point until we got a sense from the province, their reaction to this request, and then how they would want to proceed, because I can't imagine that they would suddenly make a decision to get rid of it without consulting with municipalities on how that decision would then impact their, the work that you do and appeal process. But
I think this would probably put that in motion. I mean, if this were to go through, I would think the province, I would hope they would certainly do that or take a look at that with the municipalities involved.
well, certainly, sorry, your worship, if I could just add, this issue has come up yet again with the province's housing task force study, because it brought to the forefront a number of concerns related to the OLT as well. If you haven't seen that, it's a lengthy read, but they have mentioned several issues as well. So,
Thank you. Councillor Purdy, go ahead.
Thank you, worship. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm kind of like Joel and Ross in that I understand the premise behind it, but I just, as far as the appeals or lack thereof, and in terms of who's responsible financially for any litigation and things like that, I'm not sure if we could send a message to the proper people to see if we can get some sort of clarification before we make a decision, or defer, or what. I'm not sure what I'm just not comfortable at this time that we have enough information.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Welton.
Yes, your worship. We're just sending this off to the province, and if I get this kind of half straight, what Ken said, that they're going to come back with options. I don't believe they're just going to say, hey, this is what you're going to do. And there'll be some, I believe there'll be some kind of an appeal process. And I think there should be, along with saying that. And I have been like you, your worship, I've been involved in this a couple of times and they kind of drive you crazy, but it's a law I guess we have to work around. I would like to send the motion down and wait to see what the response is. That would be my take on the whole thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Welton. I think that's the whole idea of this, is to kind of put things in motion for further discussion. Any other comments from council? Councillor Such.
Yeah, I think that we should support it and see what they have to come back to us. And that would be a way of trying to start some kind of a ground roots of where it's going to go.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Councillor Such. Councillor Field.
I'm still sort of stuck with this. I almost feel like we should a wait and see process, like to say that we want to dissolve it and we don't know what's worse, what they're going to suggest or move to. I just don't feel that I have enough information to vote in favor to say dissolve it when I don't know what the next steps are going to be. And I believe that people still need to have some kind of appeal process, not just going to court with it. I don't think I can support it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from council? Councillor O'Hara.
I would like to support it and get rid of the red tape. I'm just afraid of what would happen down the road. You know, are we responsible then if we make a decision and turn somebody down or whatever? Can we be sued through litigation? I don't know. So I think there's a lot of things in there that I'm not sure of. So I don't know if I could support it actually either.
Okay. Any other comments from council? I think because of the debate, I'm going to ask for a recorded vote, please. Mrs. Pearson, if you could get prepared, we'll have a recorded vote.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just a reminder that Your Worship, in this case, you will vote last. Typically that would be yours, but also as the requester of the recorded vote, that will be the second last accommodation as well. And from there, we will go in alphabetical order. So we will start with Councillor Field, and if you can just say for or against in your vote, please. Obviously, for is in support of, against is not in support. Councillor Field.
Against.
Councillor O'Hara.
Against.
Councillor Purdy.
Against.
Councillor Such.
Against.
Councillor Welton.
For it.
Mayor Loosely.
I'm in favor.
So Your Worship, that is 4 against and 1 in and 2 in favor.
Okay, so that is not carried.
Correct.
Okay, let's move on now. At this time, we have for delegation and presentations tonight, we have Jacob. And I'd like to welcome Mr. Rick Marsh and Mrs. Kathy Cullen. If they're present, they're going to speak to us regarding the wastewater treatment plant annual report. And every member of council did receive a copy for their review prior. So Mr. Marsh and Mrs. Cullen, can you hear me okay? Yeah, I can see you.
Okay, yeah.
I'll turn the meeting over to you, whoever wants to start. Joe, are you representing Mr. Marsh, or is Mr. Marsh here? Oh, there he is.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm here as well.
Okay, and I see Joe Bloomfield.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. And I'll turn the meeting over to you. Go ahead.
Well, I'd just like to start, Your Worship. Joe Bloomfield is the acting or the new PM for the Petrolia site. If you haven't met him, This is him here in the camera. Just welcome him to the meeting as well.
It's nice to meet
Ron,
you
do you
all,
want to- Go ahead, Joe.
and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Great, thank you. Did you want to review the report, or do you just want me to open it up for questions?
We could just open it up for questions, Your Worship, if that's what you'd like.
Okay, I'll I think what I'll do too, I'd like to introduce you to those on the screen. I'll introduce you to council. Councilors, please put your hand up. They can probably see it on the screen as well, but I'll start with Councillor Sutch, please. Councillor Field. Councillor O'Hara. Councillor Welton. Councillor Purdy. And of course, we have our clerk, Mrs. Pearson, and our CAO treasurer, Mr. Rick Charlebois. So I'll open it up now to council. You've had a chance to review it. Do you have any questions regarding that report? Well, that's good news. If there's no questions, I think the only thing I'd like to ask, is there any outstanding issues that need to be dealt with?
So currently we've been having issues with the disc filters that were installed. We've done some work in doing some modifications with that. Unfortunately, the company that manufactures those disc filters is no longer in existence. So we've made some modifications to them to help them run properly. And we're continuing to monitor that situation. Currently, the work that we've done seems to be going well, but we're still working on maybe a further solution down the road.
Okay, thank you. I'll just one more time ask, is council, anything you'd like to add? While you're thinking about that, I certainly want to thank you for your report. It was well done. It's great to see that for the town, and I think we're very proud of our wastewater treatment plant over the last few years. So thank you for that. Anything else from council? If not, for the three of you, thank you for coming to address council. Keep up the good work. Appreciate that.
I'd just like to say one thing, Your Worship, if you don't mind.
Nope, go ahead.
Like Joe said, that company's no longer in service or around. So we've been, instead of outsourcing like Germany and Florida and all that, we've relied on local DUFs and oil well supply to help us with the filter and with parts, and just shop local instead of all over Germany or Florida. So we're keeping it local, trying the best we can.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to hear that. And I certainly want you to shop and try and do whatever you can locally if possible. That's great. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for coming. And for council, we'll move on to the community announcements, recognitions, and
Your
awards.
Worship, Your Worship, I do need
Yes.
a motion to adopt that report so that they can be in compliance with their year-end compliance.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Pearson. Okay, I'll need a motion to approve that. Moved by Councillor Field, seconded by Councillor Purdy. I will ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to adopt as presented the 2021 wastewater treatment plant annual report.
And thank you, Mrs. Pearson. I almost missed that. Any questions from council? If not, all those approving that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Now we'll move on to the community announcements, recognitions, and awards. And I'd like to ask for a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Field. I'll need a seconder. Seconded by Councillor O'Hara. And I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive as information only the February 14th, 2022 community announcements as presented.
Any questions from council? Mrs. Ellsworth, do you have anything you would like to add?
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing at this time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all those in favor of approving that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. And that brings us to the first opportunity for the public to address council. And I'll turn this over to Mrs. Pearson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And so with our opportunities to address council, we will ask that there be a speakers list formed. I do have a registration for this evening for the first opportunity. So once that registration has been completed, we will go back and form the speakers list from that component. So we'll start with the registrations and then we will form the speakers list. So our first registration, Your Worship, is Ms. Liz Welsh.
Okay. Mrs. Wells, can you hear me?
I can.
Go ahead.
Good evening. I in fact did have some questions about the wastewater treatment plant annual report. It's excellent as always. I feel because it's one of Petrolia's largest infrastructure assets that there should be some questions. Also, I think it's important that the residents know more about this. I noticed that in January, February, and the first 2 weeks of March and December that the E. coli was considerably over the ECA limits. And while they did explain that for November, I didn't see an explanation for those other instances. I'll just ask the questions and then we can go back and they can answer if they're able to. The leachate volumes should decrease over the years as the landfill is now officially closed, but I noticed they anticipated additional sludge with the added treatment of the leachate. And I did reach out to RWDI and ask them that question. And in fact, the leachate should decrease over time. There might be some fluctuations, but generally on a decreasing trend. I wondered if the lagoons were aerated. I feel like I should know the answer to that, but I don't. And I know the plant has the capacity for anticipated new development in Petrolia. Do we also have the capacity for additional sludge? And wondering what happens to the sludge when it does get cleaned out. I believe it was done a number of years ago. And also wondering about the considerable work done at Barrett's Lane. Is it now a completely renewed pumping station?
I certainly can't speak to that. I don't know if staff can speak to that or if you want to refer those questions to staff and report back to Mrs. Wells, or does any member of the staff? I'm not sure. I think the members have left from the plant, but Mr. Charlebois, would you like to comment?
Oh, I can speak to those questions if you'd like.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Bloomfield. Yep.
Yeah, so the E. coli, we have documentation from the MECP that we're allowed to turn off our UV disinfection system from the month of November to the end of March each calendar year. And that just allows us to have a little bit of savings. It does take quite a bit of energy to run that system. And the E. coli impact on the receiving stream in the winter is far less than in the spring and summertime months. As for the leachate, the current agreement with the waste management doesn't actually specify that we monitor for solids. This is something we can do, but yes, over time, that should slowly decrease. The lagoons are not aerated. They're quite large, and that would just be more than what would be needed. As for the plant capacity and sludge generation, that's what the primary that's what the lagoons are used for, is to receive our sludge. And I believe several years ago, 2017, 2018, sludge was removed from the lagoons after many years of buildup and was land applied. And that's kind of the process seen at many other waste plants. And as for Barrett's Lane, the pump station, for the most part, has been completely renewed. There is still some work for some grading and ladder replacement inside the wet well, as that environment in there isn't very hospitable for anything really. and has never been replaced before. So that will be coming in the coming years as well to replace that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay,
Not a problem.
thank you, Mr. Bloomfield and Mrs. Wells for addressing council. All right, Mrs. Pearson, who's next?
Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. So yes, anyone wishing to address council will continue with the speakers list. If you can just please raise your bionic hand and we'll form that speakers list. Your Worship, at this time, we have no one wishing to address council.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Pearson. That'll move us on to the financial accounts report. We don't have any of the reports tonight. We will have at the next meeting. But I'd like to ask Mr. Charlebois just to speak on the recent grant we got for asset management. So Mr. Charlebois, go ahead, please.
Yes, through you, Your Worship. So we're just officially recognized last week for a Federation of Canadian Municipalities. They've got a bunch of money from the federal government to help out municipalities across Canada with asset management planning. It's a fancy word for all the major infrastructure that municipality needs to provide the critical services that it provides, like water and wastewater services and roads. So we got the maximum grant. This is the second round of these grants. We got another one in 2018, I think it was. And with this grant, we'll be updating our what's called our asset management plan. And it's good for 5 years. Our last one was done in 2016, and we'll use that grant money to help us update our plan for 2022. Okay, thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah, Mr. Charlebois, I just wanted to, and the amount is for how much?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. The amount, we got the maximum grant, which was $50,000.
Yeah, that's great news for our community. And again, not all the communities receive that.
Right.
So again, thank you to Mr. Charlebois and his team for doing the necessary application and completing that. So that $50,000 will be put to good use. Thank you, Mr. Charlebois.
Thank you.
Moving on to reports and a motion for finance. We have a report from Mrs. Annette Strand, Deputy Treasurer, regarding the 2022 Heritage Tax Rebate. And like to ask for a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor Field, seconded by Councillor Purdy. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and also just Ms. Welsh, who is the chair of the Heritage Committee. She is with us this evening should there be any questions of council. And so that motion is that the Council of the Town of Petrolia receive and file the report of the Deputy Treasurer dated the 14th of February 2021 regarding the 2021 Heritage Tax Rebates.
Any discussion from council? Mrs. Strand, Deputy Treasurer, do you have anything you would like to add?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Heritage Rebate Bylaw was updated, reviewed and updated by the Heritage Committee in 2021, brought to Council for approval in September. So this was our first year processing the increase of the 25% rebate up from 15% prior. So the total portion of the town's cost was approximately $9,000, which was well below the maximum of $15,000 approved by council. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Strand. Okay, last chance, anything from council? If not, I'll call the vote. Did we read that motion, Mrs. Pearson?
I did, Your Worship, but I can also read it again if you wish.
I don't think we need it again. Is everybody okay with it? Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Moving on to water, wastewater, we have none. For operations, we have a report from Mrs. Mandy Pearson, Clerk Operations Clerk, regarding a request for road naming designations in Greenwood Estates. And we have a motion before you. I'd ask for a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor Welton, seconded by Councillor Such. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive the report of the Clerk Operations Clerk dated February 14th, 2022, regarding street naming of the new subdivision to be known as Greenwood Estates. And that Council endorsed the, sorry, my screen just went blank. Council endorsed the assignment of Katie Court, Eleanor Court, and Greenwood Drive to be the named streets of this subdivision.
Any questions from council? Mrs. Pearson, do you have anything else you would like to report?
Outside of the report, Your Worship, I think I did identify it, but they are within our regulations, and it's great to see another step forward in this housing subdivision.
Great, thank you. Okay. All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on, we have a report from Mr. Mike Thompson, Director of Operations, regarding the budget 2022 capital purchase compact excavator. I'll ask for a move and a seconder to put that motion on the floor, please, for discussion. Moved by Councillor Welton, seconded by Councillor Field. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive and file the report of the Director of Operations dated February 14th, 2022, regarding procurement of a 3-ton compact excavator, and that the Operations Department to proceed with the approved budget purchase through South Point Equipment.
Any questions from council? Again, this is the new one and it does have a warranty, so I think that's important to be aware of. Mr. Thompson, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, if seeing none from any other further questions, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Moving on to the Community Services and Facilities. We have a report from Mr. Dave Menzies, Director of Facilities and Community Services, regarding the caregivers of Petrolia feral cats donation in 2021. And I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Purdy, seconded by Councillor Welton. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is that the Council of the Town of Petrolia endorse the report of the Director of Community Services and Facilities dated February 14th, 2022, regarding the 2021 feral cat expenditures, and that council continue with the program in 2022 with the $1,500 donation that will be controlled by the town and paid by services directly to the providers.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. And that actually dealt with 13 cats. Any questions from council? Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just when I was reading the report, I saw where it said the adults are unadoptable and will be dealt with accordingly. I think I know what that means, but is there anybody that can answer?
I'm not sure, unless Mr. Menzies, can you speak to that, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Purdy. Dealt with could be what they tell me is a number of different options. Yeah, like a senior's cat house for unwanted cats. Once tests come back and possible disease will probably be euthanized, but that's the last step. So they try to accommodate them in a single cat setting.
Is that okay, Councillor Purdy?
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Menzies. Any other questions from council? Mr. Menzies, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick note. This is the second year asking council for this. Eventually, once the caregivers have all their paperwork in order, the process that we've discussed is to follow proper donation guidelines. Presently, we don't feel comfortable just handing out the money to what you would classify as some individuals. So once they get certified, everything's in place, then we can make a straight donation and they'll be responsible for their own money. But in the interim, staff feel it's best that we control the money to the service providers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Menzies, and I certainly agree with that. Okay, any other questions from council? If not, all those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We also have a report from Mr. Dave Menzies, Director of Facilities and Community Services, regarding the Lambton Central Petroleum Optimist Club Spring Craft Show 2022. And I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor, please. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Welton, seconded by Councillor O'Hara. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And thank you. That is for the council of the town of Petrolia to approve the temporary road closure of Station Street between Petrolia Line and Railroad Street on Saturday, May 14th, 2022, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. for the expanded Lambton Central Petroleum Optimist Club outdoor craft sale. And that all rental fees associated with this event and at the farmers market be waived for the Lambton Central Petroleum Optimist Club as outlined in the report of the Director of Community Services and Facilities dated February 14th, 2022.
Any questions from council? I think it's great to see things start to open up again. Councillor O'Hara.
Well, I think it's really good to see that they're planning on a lot of expansion and all that brings more people to Petrolia.
That's correct. Thank you, Councillor O'Hara. Any other questions from council? Mr. Menzies, do you have anything you'd like to add to that motion?
Thank you, Worship. Nothing at this time.
Thank you. Okay, seeing none from council, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the motion before you? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We have a report from Mr. Dave Menzies, Director of Facilities and Community Services regarding the single source vendor approval. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Fields, seconded by Councillor Purdy. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to approve the single source preferred vendors for purchases and installation of the goods and services listed in the report of the Director of Community Services and Facilities dated February 14th, 2022.
I'd like to call upon Mr. Charlebois, CEO Treasurer, for his comments, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. These capital projects that you see in front of your council tonight, they're all unique situations. Like, for example, the first two are Blue Water Power. And as council knows, Petrolia has a ownership percentage of Blue Water Power. And we've had a very long relationship, I think, well, since the beginning of Blue Water Power. It's a good corporation. The second one is the ice resurfacer. This is the program that we're in, and that's why that one's there. The same with the condenser unit. Same relationship there with Black and McDonald over 25 years. And the entrance sign for the town, Pride Signs, that's a company we used before, and we've been working with them to get the second sign all set. Don't know if Mr. Menzies would like to add anything to that.
Mr. Menzies, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Nope. The CAO has cleared it up. If there's any individual questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but nothing more at this time, Your Worship.
Thank you. I'll open it up to council. Councillor Field, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. You know, I appreciate this report coming this way. I think these are unique, as the CAO has said. You know, I feel pretty strong about Blue Water Power. And I think we have relationships with each one of those. And to make our town sign, it would be good to go back to the company. You know, I've had a lot of people comment on our town sign. As it's lit up at night, it really does stand out and is likely one of the best signs in the county. So I think they are unique, and I appreciate the time that's put into it to identify these issues. But you know, I think when you have a proven vendor for some of these and they work within the budget, I think this is good. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Field. Councillor Purdy, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. I guess more of a comment than anything. My only concern about circumventing our own procurement policy is just maybe that we might be missing out on potential cost savings that happen with the competitive bidding process. And the other thing is probably more so the optics. Like I worry that, you know, when you go with a single source, you know, maybe it doesn't, you know, it leaves more room for people to to be concerned about issues involving a single company. And I want to make sure that, you know, the corporation and council and also staff are protected. So that's my only concerns.
Thank you, Councillor Purdy, but that is a good point. We try and make it open and fair as much as we can. But the other thing, as CAO mentioned, we do have a vested interest in Blue Water Power. We own 7.5%. Councillor O'Hara, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you'd never turn your back on your own company as Blue Water Power. But with some of the other things, I have concerns that we, I think in the past, they've tendered out for an ice resurfacer, and Arena Equip, I believe is the name, is it? Has been the lower bidder, but I still think we should be giving other companies a chance. I do have a problem with just handing it to somebody.
No, that's a good point, Councillor O'Hara, and I have kind of too. But I do think, you know, if they've been working with us on certain things, it's kind of nice, they know what we need. However, there's always that possibility someone could come in and say, I could have done it for less. So anyway, you have okay, Councillor Charlebois, or sorry, CAO, but Rick Charlebois, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just to add a little bit more about the ice resurfacer, there's only really two manufacturers. The one is the one that we've been using for a long time is Olympia. That's the machine we have, and that's a Canadian machine. The other one is the Zamboni. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Menzies, but I think that's from the States. And with the exchange on the dollar, I think we already know it'd be more expensive.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Menzies, would you like to add anything to that?
Hi, the CAO is correct. The current operation of the Resurfacer Corp ice resurfacer has been in the arena for almost 20 years. The equipment, the blades, the parts, the laser attachment all come with this. If we wanted to switch or have a tender process to get the exact price for a Zamboni style unit, absolutely, the town could go out for that. It's a 11-month build on each unit. So whatever council's wishes are, to stick with the continued manufacturer that we have, or to go and receive an actual quote. I have a verbal quote, which is higher, but nothing in writing, as the town has done this on this latest Olympia a number of years ago. We rolled over the trade-in and purchased the new unit. So that's all at this moment, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Menzies. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just for clarification, because obviously you guys know when I don't, but so ice resurfacing is not, there's not multiple vendors for Olympia then. It's Olympia is a single for all of Canada. So there's not like a card dealership kind of thing where you have the manufacturer.
That was my understanding. I think Mr. Charlebois said there was two, Zamboni or Olympia, and I think the one is in the States. Right. Councillor Sutch, go ahead.
I think that, you know what, Dave has done the right thing. I think the Olympia is in most cases considerably cheaper. And when it comes time to repair in a short order, I believe they're still in Elmira, St. Jacobs. I think that's the right thing to do. And Zamboni is probably, if not close to twice as much.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Sutch. All right, anything else from council before I call the vote? Councillor Field.
Yeah, all the good points. But I still stick with, you know, the Olympia, the Bridgeview Park. I feel that each one of them brings something unique, and you know, I believe it's good that they're bringing it to us and that we're having this good conversation and debate about it. It's not like it's being done behind us, but I believe that each one of them has good merits.
Thank you. Any other comments from council?
Your worship, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
It's Dave. I just want to point out again, as the CAO mentioned, these are all continued relationships and single source that make perfect sense on both a financial budget idea and as best practices. I can assure council that we have researched each individual item. The condenser units, Hudson Hope, 102,000, Innisfield, 112,000, replacing the coils at an arena in Trenton area, 40,000. This is a complete rebuild of the condenser unit from Black and Mac. Council approved the installation of the computer system from Black and Mac and their icebox that control the system. So that makes sense both on a technical side and a money side. We will be bringing to council numerous, as you see tonight with the operations department mini-X, quotes and formal and informal tendering, boilers, HVAC, YMCA roof, cleaning contracts, water retention ponds, a skyjack, dehumidifier, fencing. They're all in the process of tendering or getting quotes through bids and tenders, or the poor clerk hasn't been dumped on yet to get all these put together to get out. So council will be receiving and approving numerous projects throughout the next 3 to 7 months. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Menzies. I guess it's been a few minutes. Councillor Purdy, last one. Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, again, the reason I asked those questions were because that's not my area of expertise, but after hearing that these are specialty items, and I didn't realize Olympia was, one place in all of Canada. So my concerns have been addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have to go back. Mrs. Pearson, did we read that motion already?
I have, Your Worship, but again, happy to reread.
Read it one more time, just so we're all clear, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to approve the single source preferred vendors for purchases and installation of the goods and services listed in the report of the Director of Community Services and Facilities dated February 14th, 2022.
Okay, all those in favor of that motion before you? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. And moving on, we have a report from Mr. Menzies, Director of Facilities, Community Services regarding the AODA compliance. And I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor O'Hara. Seconded by Councillor Purdy. And I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive and file the report of the Director of Community Services and Facilities dated February 14th, 2022 regarding the 2021 AODA compliance report.
Any questions from council? Just a short one, if I could, for you, Mr. Menzies. On the actual, I see on the application, there was a couple questions that said they were mandatory, but they weren't filled in for yes or no. Are you still working on those?
No, the compliance report, it could be the question without having it in front of me. Could Your Worship refer to a committee? We're small enough where the committee does not necessarily have to be arranged. We're under the 10,000 people threshold, but as you reported earlier, that could change over the next few years. So those could be some of the questions in that category.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Menzies. Maybe if you just want to check, I just want to make sure we haven't missed anything, that's all. Councillor, or sorry, Mr. Charlebois, CAO, go ahead.
Oh, yes, through Your Worship. Yeah, hey, Dave, I've got it in front of me and it's exactly what you just said. They got little red stars beside those questions, Your Worship. And I think it's because we're under the 10,000 threshold, but if we keep growing, we'll be there shortly.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Okay,
thank you.
I'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving that motion before you? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. And we have a report from Mr. Dave Menzies, Director of Facilities and Community Services regarding the Farmers Market 2022. And I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Purdy, seconded by Councillor Field. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And thank you. That is for the council of the town of Petrolia to adopt the fee schedule for the farmers market Tuesday night market and propose dates for both the Saturday morning farmers market and the Tuesday night market, as noted in the report of the Director of Community Services and Facilities dated February 14th, 2022.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. And I see in there too, just so I'm clear, there is no change in the fees for 2022. Is that correct, Mr. Charlebois? I think you're on mute.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, yes. For the farmer's market, I don't believe anything was changed. There was very few changes in 2022. Are you able to confirm that, Mr. Menzies?
Mr. Menzies, go ahead.
Yes, no changes to Saturday's farmer's market fee schedule as council approved.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion from council? If not, all those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. And we have a report from Mrs. Mandy Pearson, Clerk, Operations Clerk, regarding the election 2022 update, restricted acts of council, and that's regarding lame duck period and delegated authority. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Purdy, seconded by Councillor Welton. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to receive and file the report of the clerk operations clerk dated February 14th, 2022 regarding election 2022 lame duck period, and that the bylaw presented before council this evening be endorsed.
Any questions from council? Councillor O'Hara.
Not a question, but a comment. I wish they'd get a new name for it besides lame duck. You know, I don't walk as good as I used to, but I'm not that bad.
Thank you, Councillor O'Hara, and I kind of agree with that. That is kind of a strange thing to call us a lame duck, but anyway, thank you for that. Any other questions from council? Mrs. Pearson, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Just that I will, as the election progresses, I will keep these updates in any direction coming.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. Oh, sorry, Councillor Purdy, go ahead.
I was going to suggest paralyzed penguin, maybe.
Now you're really getting confusing. All right. All those in favor of the motion before you? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Moving on, we have a report from Mr. Rob Nesbitt, Senior Planner, regarding proceedings to Glenview Estates Development application compliance. And that's continuous file from November 2020 regarding applications for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. And I just wanted to mention that that bylaw is on for council's approval later tonight. There's no motion at this time that I'm aware of, but I would like to call upon our senior planner, Mr. Nesbitt, or if Mr. McIntosh is present, if they have anything you would like to add to this.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have nothing to add to the report. Hopefully it speaks for itself. I would note that the Conservation Authority originally had concerns from a hazard and a natural features perspective. They've already signed off, and they signed off prior to the second public meeting. And then the second issue was with regards to the oil wells on the adjacent property. And the applicant obtained the services of a qualified expert in that area, and determined that the proposed subdivision would not have an impact on the heritage oil wells and their continuation. And likewise, because it's a heritage oil field, it has no impact on the subdivision itself. So those are the main objectives of the supplementary report before you.
Thank you, Mr. Nesbitt. Yes, and I did see and read those in that were listed for each councillor on the agenda. Does council have any questions regarding those main two items? And again, we'll be dealing with this with our bylaws later on in the agenda. Okay, Councillor Field.
Yeah, just more of a comment. It was the old map that's there, the drawing one, with the amount of wells on it. It's pretty unbelievable, I guess, if we look at the big scale of Petrolia, where the oil wells were and are, and how many subdivisions, how many houses are right around capped wells now. So it was pretty an informative report with the well portion of it. So just more of a comment.
Thank you, Councillor Field, and I agree. It was a good report to read, and it was something that I think we needed to do for clarification, and we now have that. Mrs. Pearson, we don't need a motion with this at this time. We'll deal with it with our bylaws.
Correct, Your Worship. If council wishes, they could receive and file it, but this was just to return to council based on the outstanding compliance items. So
Mandy, we told Annette earlier that Walt wanted to speak.
So I'm sorry, I can't quite hear who's on here, but we will have a second opportunity to address council coming forward.
Yeah, that's correct. We won't do that now. That can be done with at our second opportunity to address council. All right, I'm back on to council. Any questions regarding that before you? I don't think we need to receive and file it. We'll just move on if that's okay with council. All right, moving on. We have a report from Mr. Ken Melanson, Manager, Planning and Development Services, County of Lambton, regarding changes to the Planning Act, and provide an update on the RFP for consultant services for Petrolia's OP review. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Welton, seconded by Councillor Field. Before we go any further, I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, and then I'll ask Mr. Melanson to see if he has anything he'd like to add. Go ahead, Mrs. Pearson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive and file the report of Mr. Ken Melanson, Manager, Planning and Development Services for the County of Lambton, regarding changes to the Planning Act, and provide update on the RFP for consultant services for the Town of Petrolia's OP review.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. Mr. Melanson, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the memo that I provided to the county clerks is rather self-explanatory. There were a number of act changes, one of which has been operationalized effective immediately, which was the change to the period of time for severances. So we've already operationalized that throughout all of the county municipalities, because we do have committee of adjustment applications. So going forward, anyone who receives a consent approval will now, instead of having 1 year to complete their conditions before it expires, will now have 2. So that's already initiated. The timing of these changes in my memo actually works out quite well, because as noted, and we've discussed previously, Petrolia will be part of 3 other municipalities, St. Clair, Brook Alvinston, and Lambton Shores, where we are going to be embarking on phase 2 of the consultant-led OP updates for the county. So I can advise council that request for proposal went out last week. So it is now live and open for bidding, subject of course to council approving the budget. So if something changes, we can still change that, but we're on course to have it open for a month, and then we'll be the county will render a decision to hire a consultant. So stay tuned. There's things coming down the pipe for that. It is a conformance exercise, so it's to bring your official plan into conformance with the county's plan coming into effect, but also the number of these act changes. One of the major changes that came about in January was also this idea of delegation of authority to staff in terms of some decision making. So the timing of all of this actually works out well, because in order to actually delegate some of the very minimal risk issues, like taking holding symbols off when proper agreements have been put in place, requires an official plan update before you can delegate. So it will work out well. We'll have those conversations as we move forward, and council can choose to delegate some things if you wish to get them off your plate to staff, or you can leave it as it is and it will be status quo, but it will form part of this OP update. So that's all I would add, your worship, but I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Melanson. Yeah, I'm really pleased to hear that as far as some simple things that can be, we can speed up the process by having staff just do those things. I'll open it up. Council, do you have any questions for Mr. Melanson at this time? All right, seeing none, Mr. Melanson, thank you for addressing council to give us that update. I'll call the vote. All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. And that moves us on to fire and emergency management. And I'd like to call upon Chief Arms to just give us a detailed report regarding SORT. That stands for Support Operations Response Team. Mr. Arns, are you there?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about our SORT team. Very proud of this group member of our department. Very unique. We're very fortunate as a town to have such a unique group of volunteers who dedicate so much time and energy into protecting the residents. It's comprised of about 12 members. I'm not sure of any other department or any other municipality with such a group of members. Just a real brief history, I guess. They started back in early 2000s as a SERV team, Community Emergency Response Volunteers. They've since changed some different roles. Their primary function back then was surrounding emergency management. And within the last few years, they've become an integrated part and recognized members of the Petrolia North Enniskillen Fire Department. And the roles have switched a little, still maintaining a lot of the emergency management functions, but taking on some different support roles for the fire department, and had a name change to support operations to make it a little more appropriate to what their new roles are and what they actually do. They are a division of the Petrolia North Enniskillen Fire Department. They do support all on-scene operations for the firefighters and during long duration events, or we've changed roles, and they've also got things, hazmat decontamination. They conduct firefighter rehab. There's some other assigned duties that they do on the scene as well. So a large support role for our suppression members. From an emergency management side of things, they're instrumental in setting up shelters. Luckily, this past snowstorm, we didn't have to get that deep involved, but they are prepared to go 24/7 should the need arise in not just our municipality, but surrounding municipalities. They play a big role in compliance for the province for our emergency management program within the town. They also take on managing volunteers and different functions within emergency management roles when we are under a state of emergency with certain criteria. And then more recently, and what brought the award to light was their assistance with COVID. Back in the early stages, back 2 years ago now almost, in conjunction, collaboration with the Central Lambton Family Health Team, we had to come up with a means for patient assessments, for administering tests, that sort of stuff. So combined, we came up with a game plan, and the dedication of our SORT team, we were able to implement it and maintain it for the good of our municipality and surrounding municipalities that later went into testing centers and some different areas. So that was really what brought the award to light, or brought this team to light even more. They're not looking for recognition, but sometimes it kind of happens, and this was one way it just unfolded. The award itself, so it's given annually to members and groups who significantly given back to residents in Ontario through volunteerism, and making the province basically a safer, better place to live. So the award itself took place virtually this year, again, second year in a row, thanks to COVID restrictions. But the award was very humbling, I guess. There was recipients, 20 odd recipients of individuals plus groups, and very recognizable, very honorable, and gave back a lot to the communities. And for the SORT team to be a member and recognition and receive that recognition, it was a very proud moment for the team and for all the support that we get from council and the residents. Yeah, and that's kind of where it all landed. So annual annual June Callwood Award is well recognized, and for us, it's very good for our team.
Thank
I
you,
think-
Chief. Oh, thank you, Chief Arns. That's really great to hear. It's certainly a real plus for our community and surrounding area, and I'm very pleased with what they do to support us. Councillor Purdy, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Jay. Yeah, pass along my sincere appreciation as well. I know that this award's the culmination of thousands and upon thousands of thankless volunteer hours. Especially, it's really been brought to light the importance of the team the last couple of years through the pandemic, assisting at the health team in any way possible, putting up temporary tents, things like that. So, I mean, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of dedication, and you know, I really appreciate everything that they do.
Thank you.
Councillor Purdy. Yep. Any other
Thanks, Councillor.
questions for Chief Arns from council? Again, and Chief, please pass on my congratulations as well on behalf of council to the SORT team and all the things they do, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, we have Marketing, Arts and Communications. We have a report from Mrs. Larissa Ellsworth, Director of Marketing, Arts and Communication, regarding the vacant and underutilized building policy. And I'd like to ask for a mover and a seconder to put this motion on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor Welton, seconded by Councillor Purdy. And I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to endorse the report of the Director of Marketing, Arts and Communications dated Monday, February 14th, 2022, regarding vacant and underutilized building policy, and that the policy before council this evening be approved.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. And before I turn it over to council, I do want to thank Mrs. Ellsworth and her staff involved with putting this together. I think this is really good for our community. I'll open it up to council. Any questions regarding this? Councillor Field.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree. It's a very detailed, very comprehensive report. I have had an opportunity to talk to Mrs. Ellsworth and as well as Denise. And, you know, I think they put a lot of time and thought into this. And I think the one thing that really comes out of this is we're not trying to go after businesses. Our businesses have been part of this process, the business group. It's more going after some vacant buildings that have been vacant. We had discussion about one of them that I am totally convinced has been vacant for 25 to 30 years on the main street of Petrolia. I don't believe there's been anything in there since, it's easily 25 years. So that's not somebody that wants to rent. And, you know, an open storefront on our main street isn't a good thing. To be able to work with them to get this in place, I just feel that there's a lot of merit to it. I believe that our farmers market has been a great avenue for new businesses to come into Petrolia and to have a chance to sell to us, and they've hooked into other businesses where they've shared shelf space. So, you know, I think businesses that really want to do this, and, you know, I think it's a great report, and I like to see it move forward to the next steps. I think that they've spent a lot of time, and I think this is our next step for our downtown.
Thank you, Councillor Field. I certainly agree with all of that. Councillor Welton, did you have your hand up?
Yes, Your Worship, I would echo what Councillor Field has said. I think there's been a lot of hours put into this. You know, even just reading the report took some time. So I can't imagine how much time it took to put this together. I'm in favor of it, and I hope we can move forward with this to the next step, whatever that is, and get something going for especially the one building.
Thank you, Councillor Welton. Any other questions from council or any comments? Mrs. Ellsworth, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have nothing to add, but I'm willing to answer any questions, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no other hands up, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. That now moves us to our closed session, or to go in camera. I believe and I'll ask Mrs. Pearson, that's just being deferred to a later meeting?
Correct, Your Worship. Yes, so this evening we will hear what is now known as A and B, but was previously known as B and C.
Okay, so we will be going into closed session for personnel 01-2022 personnel matters about an unidentifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, proposal of contract services of a municipal employee. And the next item is legal 01-2022, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudge significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual and other negotiations of a person, group of persons, or organization, and which is the CUPE contract. So I'd like to ask for a motion to go into camera, please. Moved by Councillor Welton, seconded by Councillor Field. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of Town of Petrolia to break from open session and move into closed session.
Any discussion from council? All those in favor of that motion? That motion carries. Mrs.
Your
Pearson,
Worship,
we'll just
absolutely.
remain.
The process will, anyone who is not a member of council, please remain. You just stay tight here in the meeting, and we will move the members of council into that separate room. So just bear with me as we move forward, and we will go from there.
Okay, thank you. So councilors, just stay put. Thank you.
Your Worship, I believe you're just on mute.
Sorry. Thank you, everyone, for your patience and waiting. We are now back in action. I would like to rise and report the following. Council received a report from the CAO Treasurer regarding approval of a secondary employment opportunity for the Fire Chief, Director of Public Safety, teaching at the Fire Training Center. Council supported Mr. Charlebois' approval of this employment, noting that all secondary employment continued to be approved by the CAO and will take place outside of regular operating hours of salaried employment at no cost to the town of Petroleum. And the second one is council received a report from the CAO Treasurer regarding the recently endorsed memorandum of settlement from the recent CUPE union negotiations. Council provided direction of approval to the amended memorandum of settlement with notation that the union bargaining unit should in future ensure that any signed MOS be standing. And a bylaw will be presented before council during the next regular meeting. And I think I'd like to request a motion to approve that. Is that necessary, Mrs. Pearson? You're on mute.
Thank you, Your Worship. So there is no direction for approval in out of this evening. The approval will come through the bylaw at a future date.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on. At this time, this is the second opportunity for the public to address council. And I'll turn it over to Mrs. Pearson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So for our public in attendance, this is your opportunity to address council. We ask that you please raise your virtual hand and we will conform a speakers list. From that speakers list, when you come forward, please state your name, your address, and the topic of your discussion with council this evening. So I will open that up now to form the speakers list. And this will be the last call. I do not see any hands raised to form the speakers list.
Mandy, I'd like to raise my hand.
Okay, Your Worship, I do believe we have someone addressing. If they could provide us with their name, turn their camera on, and their address information.
Okay, I don't know how to turn my camera on.
Should be in the left corner, a little camera, a little. If not, that's
Corner?
fine, Krista. I can hear you okay. If you want to go ahead, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead. So your name,
Yes.
your name and your address.
State your name and address, please.
Mr. Mayor, Petrolia councilors, my name is Walter Brandt. I live in Petrolia, 41 or 85 Oil Heritage Road.
Okay, go ahead.
I personally produced oil on lot 14, concession 9 for over 50 years. My family has been there for 80 years, and it ran as an oil property for 160 years of continuous production. Developer encroachment currently threatens my operation. I would like to point out the Oil and Gas and Salt Resources Act, OGSCA, which is Ontario law, states in section 10.2, subsection 1, concerning prohibition on construction. Quote, no person shall erect, locate, or construct a building or structure of a type prescribed by the regulations within 75 meters of a well or facility, unless the well or facility has been decommissioned in accordance with this act. Regulations 2006 C33 Schedule WS1. My oil well and facility are fully licensed and they are operational. To be clear, the subsection of OGSCA on the unlicensed wells and facilities does not apply to licensed operational wells such as mine. Jim McIntosh has made a mistake or made an omission in that statement. I am lawfully entitled to the prescribed 75-meter wellhead exclusion zone from my wells. Furthermore, the provincial policy statement affords producing oil properties many more protections, which I will enumerate at a later date. Please check it out yourself. I sent it to you, the town, on December 7th, 2020. It deals with the provincial policy statement. It will be a great help for future municipal policy decisions. And as a postscript, OGSCA, the Oil, Gas, and Salt Resources Act, does not differentiate between old or new wells, historic or current. Any perceived difference is purely operational. A well is a well is a well. So I disagree totally with what the planner has written. I disagree with some of the stuff Jim McIntosh has written, and I will pursue this. If you have any comments or questions, go ahead.
All right, well, thank you for that, Mr. Brand. I think the idea, the reason we went with the specialist, Mr. McIntosh, was just to clarify the points you have just brought forward. And I mean, I'm certainly not an expert, but I have read his report. And we have to use our planner's advice. And we basically went through this process to try and clarify that. That's my understanding. Now, I don't know. I don't think we have the planners still on to speak to that. I'm not sure. Mr. Melanson, I see Ken, you're on. Can you, are you aware of this? Oh, go ahead. And this is the report regarding Mr. McIntosh and and Mr. Nesbitt. I don't know if, but again, we're not the experts. We rely on people like Mr. McIntosh and the planning department to give us this. And this is why my understanding is we went through this process to clarify that. But Ken, can you have anything to add?
Sure, through your worship, and I'm not sure if Rob is still on the line. I see him there. But you are in essence, your summary is in essence correct. When the correspondence was received from the neighbor, it was our recommendation to council was to table the item to seek a study from a qualified professional. The applicant acquired a qualified professional engineer who did an assessment, has provided a report back to staff. Perhaps Mr. Nesbitt, since I see you're on the line, I believe we also circulated the report to MMAH as part of their one window, if I'm not mistaken.
The applicant might be able to speak further. I know that they consulted with the Ministry of Natural Resources and reviewed their findings with them. And I believe that there were no concerns from the ministry.
Okay, thank you.
This contravenes section 10.2. These are operational wells in production. You've made a mistake.
Well, you know what? I want to thank you, Mr. Brand. Again, we can certainly look into it. I'm certainly not qualified to say yes or no, but we rely on that report. Mr. Nesbitt, would you like to comment?
If I might, we're not experts either. So that direction was given to the applicant to hire an expert, and we rely on their advice to us and their findings with regards to the situation in particular before council.
And he advised that I have no rights, Rob. And he advised contrary to this law. This is law. It's been law for a very long time.
Well, I think
Maybe
we
you should consult another expert.
Well, we can think about that, but I think we can debate this for hours. But the whole point of going through this, Mr. Brand, was to ask an expert to help us with this, to clarify this. But we can certainly talk to the planners, but that's, I mean, where I sit, we got an expert who come back with an opinion to give to council. And that's what we need. That's what we need.
Well, he certainly muddied the waters, Brad.
Okay.
There is a bit of truth in his final paragraph.
Okay.
The rest of it is conjecture, a lot of it.
All right. Well, I think your point is well taken.
Well, I'm glad I made it.
No, I think that's.
Appreciate you letting me make that point.
No, thank you. And just before you go, is there any comments or any questions from council to Mr. Brand? Oh, seeing none. All right, Mr. Brand, thank you for coming to address council.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
Good night.
Okay, good night. I'll go back to you, Mrs. Pearson. Anyone
Thank
else?
Your worship. So I did not see any hands raised, so I will call upon the public in attendance. If anyone wishes to address council, please raise your hand. And barring none, your worship, I believe we are good to proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Pearson. We'll go on to new and unfinished business. Do we have any new or unfinished business? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the bylaws, to have the bylaws to approve the first and second reading of bylaws 7 to 10. I'll ask for a move and a seconder to put those on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor Fields, seconded by Councillor O'Hara. Any discussion on the first and second reading? All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. And a bylaw to read the bylaws a third time, signed, sealed, and numbered would be in order. I need a mover and a seconder. moved by Counselor Welton, seconded by Counselor Purdy, and I will ask the clerk to read those bylaws, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And that is for bylaw number 7 of 2022, being a bylaw of the Corporation of the Town of Petrolia to amend bylaw 63 of 2017 in regard to a residential zone, Glenview Estates, be read a third time and finally passed. That bylaw number 08 of 2022, being a bylaw of the Corporation of the Town of Petrolia to amend the Town of Petrolia official plan, amendment number 3, be read a third time and finally passed. That bylaw number 9 of 2022, being a bylaw of the Corporation of the Town of Petrolia to delegate authority to the Chief Administrative Officer for certain acts during a lame duck period, be read a third time and finally passed. And that bylaw number 10 of 2022, being a bylaw of the Corporation of the Town of Petrolia to confirm the resolutions and motions of the Council of the Town of Petrolia, which were adopted up to and including February 14th, 2022, be read a third time and finally passed.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. Any questions from council regarding the bylaws before you? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving those bylaws? Opposed? That motion carries. And a motion to adjourn would be in order. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Counselor Field, seconded by Counselor Purdy. I'll have the clerk read that motion, please.
And that is for the February 14th, 2022 meeting of the Council of the Town of Petrolia to be adjourned to the next regular scheduled meeting of council to be held on Monday, March 28th, 2022, or at call of the chair.
Okay, all those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. I want to thank everyone. I know we were a little longer tonight, but it was a good meeting. Happy Valentine's Day. And so I'll say goodbye.
Have a great night.